This is problem number 6 for assessment number 6. It says find sine 2 theta, cosine 2 theta, and tangent 2 theta if sine theta is equal to negative 21 over 29 and secant theta is less than 0. So they're asking us to find the double angle formulas. And if you remember, we have these double angle formulas right here. And you can see we have different versions of the cosine one, but we only have one version for sine, one version for tangent. Now before we even get to that, they tell us sine theta. Well, you can see we're going to need cosine theta. We're also going to need tan theta for our double angle formulas. So we need to take this information here and figure out the quadrant we're in, and then also figure out our triangle side lengths. So let's go ahead and do that first. They say secant theta is less than 0. Well, we know secant to be 1 over cosine theta less than 0. Which means in order for this to be less than 0, right, 1 divided by cosine theta, well, 1's positive, so that means cosine theta would have to be negative in order for this to be less than 0. So in order for secant theta to be less than 0, cosine's got to be less than 0. So we can start to draw our quadrants, and we can see that quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, that cosine is less than 0 in quadrants 2 and quadrant 3. Now it says sine is negative. Well, we know sine is negative in quadrants 3 and quadrant 4. Right? Because sine deals with the y values below the x-axis, and cosine deals with the x values, which is left of the y-axis. Where are they sharing similarities? They're sharing that in quadrant 3. So we are in quadrant 3. Because we know we're in quadrant 3, we can start to draw a triangle in quadrant 3. Remember, the triangle always gets drawn off of the x-axis, right? So theta is off of the x-axis. Now they tell us sine is negative 21 over 29. Well, negative 21, opposite would be here, over 29. I need to find this spot here. So let's go ahead and mark this as x, use the Pythagorean Theorem. So x squared plus negative 21 squared equals 29 squared. So x squared equals 29 squared minus negative 21 squared. And x is going to be the root of 29 squared minus negative 21 squared. And we only want the positive version there with the root because we're talking about a distance here. Plug that in the calculator, 29 squared, 841, minus, we'll have to do negative 21 squared, make sure I put those in parentheses, 400, square root of that, 20. So we get 20 as our x value, which means that this is 20 here. Okay, how does that help us? Well, what it tells us now is we already knew sine was negative 21, negative 21 over 29. But now we know cosine theta, because we know cosine theta. Now this says 20, right? But it's to the left of the y-axis, right? We're quadrant 3. This is really negative 20 then. So cosine is negative 20, which is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, negative 20 over 29. And then we can find tangent theta. And tangent theta is negative 21, opposite, over the adjacent. So negative 21 over negative 20, which is 21 over 20. So now we know our three ratios for those functions. We can start to use the double angle formulas. So let's pull those out and use them. So for the first part, we're going to do sine of 2 theta is equal to 2 sine theta cosine theta. So we're going to write 2, and it says sine theta, and I'll actually just write it here. And then we can fill in the numbers. So sine theta we knew was negative 21 over 29. Cosine theta we know is negative 20 over 29. We plug all that in the calculator. So 2 times, we'll use fractions, negative 21, 29, and times negative 20 over 29. 840 over 841. Is a solution for the sine 2 theta, double the angle. So then we're going to go to cosine 2 theta. Cosine 2 theta. Now I got some choices to make with cosine 2 theta. And it really doesn't matter which one you choose usually. For me, I like to go with the middle one. I like the middle one for some reason. I don't know why. But 2 cosine squared theta minus 1 is the one I'm going to choose. So I'm going to go ahead and say equals 2 times negative 20 over 29 squared minus 1. If I plug that in the calculator, I'm going to start with negative, and I'll use the fraction button, 20 over 29 squared. I'm taking that times 2, and I'm subtracting 1. I get negative 41 over 841 for cosine. Those weren't too bad. Those are pretty easy. Finally, I'm going to do the double angle formula for tangent. So, double angle formula for tangent says tangent theta, or tangent 2 theta, equals 2 tan theta over 1 minus tan squared theta. Well, 2 tan theta, that's going to be 2 times 21 over 20 over 1 minus 21 over 20 squared. So let's go ahead and do 2 times, and we'll use the fraction, 21 over 20. And then we're going to do 1 minus 21. Oh, better use the fraction here. Delete, delete. 21 over 20 squared. And then I can take those and divide them, right? So the top divided by the bottom. And it gives me negative 840 over 41. And that's how we use the double angle formulas along with the information given to find our solutions for